Civilization 7 gameplay previews have now been publicly available for a couple of days, but if you don't want to watch hours and hours of gameplay previews and you want someone to just break down what they think are the best and the worst aspects of the game so far, I am here to help you out. Everything I'm about to say is, of course, a first impression. I'm still playing the game, I'm still learning the game. I'm sitting at about 40 to 45 hours so far. That's about 10 to 15 more than the preview, and you will notice some of my opinions have already changed a little bit, so we gotta leave room for my opinions to change as I continue to play the game. We also have to leave room for the fact that I am playing on a build that is not the publicly available build. It certainly might be, but I'm going to expect that there'll be some sort of day one patch or balance pass or UI update or something might happen between the build I'm playing and the build that will be released to the public when the game launches, and so I gotta leave a little room for that as well. Part of the fun of this video is putting everything in a very harsh binary of either being a best or a worst. It does mean that everything in each category is not created equal. For the purposes of this video, a best is anything where I hopped into Civ, I played the game, and I just felt like I enjoyed it. I don't want to overthink this. A worst is anything where I hopped into Civilization 7, I played it, and I didn't enjoy it as much. Again, I don't want to overthink it. Without further ado, though, let's hop in. We are, of course, as always, going to alternate bests and worsts until I run out of one or the other, and then we'll just kind of tack them all on at the end. We are also not covering the modern age or multiplayer today. This is the same as the gameplay previews, but if you're coming in here hoping, oh, I hope he talks about the modern age, no, not today. Just antiquity and exploration. Our first best, though, the first thing, the number one thing I want to tell you about Civ 7 is how much I feel that it feels like a Civilization game. It was the first direct question I wanted to answer in my preview. It was the first note I wrote down. I wrote it down on turn 18. I wrote down, I can't believe how much I already feel at home in this game. It feels like Civ. There was a lot of chatter online. There's a lot of new mechanics. The game's taken some big swings. There's a lot of stuff to learn. A little bit of controversy maybe about the Civ switching or the ages or whatever. A lot of people online expressing the opinion, oh, I hope this still feels like a Civilization game. I can obviously only speak for myself after 40 hours, but it took me about 18 turns to instantly feel at home and feel like I was playing Civ. So if that is a worry you have, at least in my experience, my first impression is that this undeniably feels like a natural extension to the Civilization franchise. The first worst is going to be a little bit of a niche issue, but I feel pretty strongly about it, and so I wanted to bring it up in this video. There's a lot of chatter about the UI in Civ 7. I'm going to avoid a lot of that chatter in this video. I'm just going to put it in the category of neutral, right? Anything I feel neutrally about is obviously not going to be in a best or a worst video. There are, however, some quality of life features that were in Civilization 6 that are now missing from Civilization 7, which does feel a little bit worse, and I think kind of pulls it down into the worst category. I don't know if it's fair to say they are missing, but there are a few features that were in Civ 6 that are not in Civ 7. One of them, for example, is the ability to kind of pin wonders on the map. One of them is the ability to rename cities. These are a little annoying for me, but they don't really bother me that much. The one that is immensely frustrating, though, that I'm having a really difficult time with, and it might just be me, I just might be like not able to adjust, missing the map search feature. In the build I'm playing, there is no way to search the map like you can in Civilization 6, and maybe it'll be a day one patch thing, and I'm just, complaining about nothing right now. But the amount of times in Civ 7 I went to search the map, whether it was a wonder for a wonder building race, whether it was like the amount of fishing boats I have, so I know if I place my warehouse buildings, how many tiles are going to be affected, etc., etc., etc. Just like in Civ 6, the amount of times I want to search the map to find information about it, and I'm just not able to do that, has been a really frustrating experience for me so far. It's on the margins, it's not a core gameplay thing, but it's something that I feel strongly about, so it's in this video. While I have a worst kind of connected off to the side of this best, the next best thing in Civilization 7 for me, in my first impressions, is the age transition system. A new feature for Civ 7, a big swing, something that it does take a while to get used to be fair. It was only the second or third game I played where I got really comfortable with the age transition system, but I think it has been extraordinarily successful in taking one overarching Civ game and breaking it down into kind of three smaller individual Civ games. It's just been immensely fun. The age transition allows for a few things that I think really bring Civ 7 to life. Going from the antiquity to the exploration age, a lot of the things are changing. There are very satisfying gameplay loops within each age, but your units get reset, your towns get reset, the quests you're going on get reset, the legacy paths get reset. What it's allowed them to do is make each part of the game feel unique, feel special, feel like you're going on a separate journey. It's allowed them to kind of elevate the gameplay as you go along. Once you play the Antiquity Age and you get into the Exploration Age, kind of more gameplay content is being added in, like a religion, for example. I just found the whole idea of the age transition and the way it practically worked to be very, very fun and exciting. Well, I think there's going to be a little bit to do on the balance side, I'm sure. It's not something I feel. I'm just guessing that once thousands of people play the game, there'll be something wrong with the system. But I found the rubber banding effect to be a really welcome addition to Civilization as well. When the age transitions, a lot of things get reset. If you have a giant army, it kind of gets reset into a smaller one. A lot of your cities get reset into towns. They do make it feel like the start of a new game. However, they don't reset so much that it feels like, what was the point of playing the first age? In the games where I was really far ahead, I got to stay really far ahead. In the games I was really far behind, I got to stay really far behind. But what it does allow for is a complete reset of your strategy. If you are going for a culture game in the Antiquity Age, but you get forward settled, boom, no stress, age transition, we're going to a new age. Let's pick a military civ. Let's go down the military legacy path. It just allows for so much dynamism. Is that a word? Is that how you say it? Dynamic? Whatever. The amount of dynamism it allows for strategy, I've really enjoyed. The rubber banding effect simultaneously felt kind of just good enough, but not too bad. And I was able to be excited about the new age without feeling like the first age was pointless. I could go on forever, but I feel like the execution of the age transition system has been very well thought out and practically is something I've really enjoyed. The next worst thing is when people don't subscribe to the YouTube video they're watching if they watch the content all the time. If you're excited about Civ 7 content, hit that subscribe button. We are only 975,000 subscribers away from 1 million, so I'm sure we'll get there soon. The connected worst to the age transitions, though, is the pacing at the end of each age. As you play Civilization 7, in the top left-hand corner of the screen, there will be a progress bar that kind of pushes you over to the next age. Once it hits 100%, the game is going to go to the next age, regardless of what you do. This makes perfect sense. If the game didn't force you into the next age, then the whole rubber banding effect wouldn't really work. However, at the very end of the age, the last like 10 or 15%, the pacing has been really frustrating in some games. I'm going to say in about 25% of my age transition so far in the first two kind of ages, I've been really frustrated at the end because I actively have to neuter something I'm good at just to stop the age from transitioning. If I'm really far ahead in science and I've completed the science legacy path and it's kind of pushing the age ahead, but I'm trying to get my culture to catch up so I can unlock some wonders, the game might just take me to the next age without giving me the chance to unlock those wonders. Now, this isn't a problem if it's strategically done. If I'm behind and the AI is pushing the game ahead and I'm not able to get everything, that makes perfect sense. If it's a strategy, if the AI knows, oh, he's really ahead in science, but has it not unlocked all the cultural stuff he wants, like let's push the age, it makes sense if it's something that's happening kind of to you. But in so many games, I was the one pushing the age ahead and there was nothing I could do about it, right? You're kind of just unlocking legacy paths as you go. I wasn't even really meaning to sometimes. And then I would have to actively make choices to neuter my empire just to keep the age there long enough that I could accomplish something. It's a really fine balancing act and a fine-tuned thing. I also found that everything that goes at the end of a science or culture tree, I'm just not able to enjoy as much, right? Like if you have a new archer unit that gets unlocked at the end of the science tree, you might only have 10 turns to use it before the age transition goes anyway. And so I think there's a lot of kind of balancing work, maybe, or pacing work to happen at the end of the ages. That was certainly part of the gameplay experience so far that I found frustrating, I want to say 25% of the time. The other 75 felt good though, so make of that what you will, but I'm putting it in the worst because again, I think on the whole a little bit negatively towards it. Just the pacing at the end. The rest of it, incredible. The pacing at the end though, I think needs a little work. The next best thing is going to make a certain subsection of the Civ fandom just mad because it exists, but I really enjoyed it, and again, I'm an easy target, but the Civ switching is so unbelievably fun. I just don't care about the historicity of it. I happily played Catherine the Great of Rome and then Catherine the Great of Spain. So easy target for this feature to work, but you don't understand how excellent it feels in a civilization game to have a civilization that is good in the era in which it's given to you. When you go to select your Antiquity Age civilization, you will have a civ that is good in that era, and you will be playing other civs who are good in that age. It's unique unit against unique unit. It's unique districts and quarters against unique districts and quarters. It's unique abilities against each other. everybody playing the game is good in the age at which you're in. It completely removes all of that nonsense from like Civ 6, where if you were a really good early game Civ, you could just kind of start a snowball because you could just kind of get rolling. If you were playing a Civ that didn't even unlock their unique abilities until the end of the game, that always felt really bad. Not in Civ 7. This is one of my best first impressions, was how the Civ system worked. Getting to the exploration age, being able to completely change my strategy or stay the course, like we mentioned before, was fun. But having a civilization available that is good at the thing I'm trying to do in the age at which I'm trying to do it is such a satisfying gameplay loop. Because Civ kind of feels like the first two ages are kind of two individual mini games of Civ happening, having a Civ that has abilities, that has units, that has districts that are good in the age in which I'm playing is just such a refreshing experience in Civilization. I don't think they could have executed it much better in my experience so far. So I know a lot of people just conceptually can't get behind it, but I think once you get over the historicity aspect of it and you just dive into it, I found it to be one of the most satisfying gameplay experiences in any Civilization game. The next worst for me is going to have to do with religion. Not the religion system, that's going in the neutral category. Don't really have a strong opinion one way or another. Certainly didn't have any negative feeling towards it. But the way religion is spread feels tedious and a little bit nonsensical. Basically what happens in the exploration age, you unlock your missionary unit that spreads your religion. The missionary units are just done by clicking, which isn't a specific problem, but it's a lot of clicking to kind of spread your religion. This is different from like the merchant units, which are also done by clicking, but it's only a couple of clicks to get a trade route set up. Basically, you got to click your missionary around the map, and then when they get to a city, you need to use 2 charges to convert that city. One on a rural tile, one on a urban tile. So not only did it just feel like a little bit of tedious clicking, right? You're just clicking your missionaries around and clicking to convert the religion. There's not really like a loop there that's happening. It also just, it just kind of took me out of it a little bit that every city just changes their religion the exact same way. It doesn't matter if your city has 90 population, has been following the religion for 200,000 years, or if they just converted to the religion yesterday. A single missionary is going to be able to show up and just be like, friends, follow the religion, and it's just going to happen. There's not a lot of combat experience involved in it like there is in Civ 6, and so if I get a missionary, I use my 2 charges on a big city of like 35 population, I work hard, I convert the religion, and then they just like rebuy a missionary and convert it back the next turn, and you're like, oh, okay, this isn't a very satisfying gameplay loop. And so everything else to do with the religions, the abilities, the pantheons, the altars, the temples, all of that stuff I feel pretty good about, but the specific way that you transfer religion between cities and that you use missionaries, I think feels a little tedious and a little nonsensical, and has not dissuaded me from using the religion system. But I find myself getting to the exploration age quite often and going, I'd only want to use the religion if I'm going down the culture path in which it's kind of necessary. If I go down any of the other 3 paths, I'm kind of like, oh, thank goodness I can just, leave that system to the side and not really worry about it. This is where the binaries get hard because like the religion thing is a worst thing, but it's a pretty kind of lowercase w worst. This is a capital B best. Every single thing to do with the combat. There's not a single thing to do with combat that on a first impression of 40 hours of combating and destroying things, I haven't absolutely loved. The army commanders, the fleet commanders, the way they move your units around, the way they do the promotions, the way the combat radius works, the way the units fight each other, the way the units get upgraded, every single thing about the combat system in Civ 7, at least to me, somebody who does a lot of domination in Civ 6 but does find it tedious, has been completely revamped in a way that is overwhelmingly enjoyable. The game also very cleverly gives you opportunities to engage with the combat system outside of just going like full-blown war on people. There's a lot of like city-state stuff you can do to fight units early on. A lot of the commander promotions are really fun. You can use the promotions in all 5 of the trees for both the fleet and the army commanders and feel pretty good about it. There's a lot of times where you'll be fighting a little bit of a smaller war, like because of the settlement limit or this, that, or the other. You're not going to just go like crazy and take 97 cities, but you might be on the defensive and AI declares war on you. You defend, you use your commander defense promotions, you get your archers or whatever it is, you defend yourself, and then the AI kind of gives you a city in return so you don't go back and attack them. A lot of really satisfying gameplay loops with the combat. I find this is a good opposite actually. Opposite to the religion where I'm like, oh, thank goodness. Like I just don't have to engage with that if I don't want to. The opposite with combat. I often find myself in games where combat is not part of my strategy, looking for not overwhelming war, but just like small ways to use combat units because it is fun and I like the commanders and I like leveling them up. And it's just such a satisfying gameplay experience with the combat. So my first impression of the combat, overwhelmingly positive. Capital B, best for the combat. I'm running out of worsts already, which is a good sign. It means we're getting to a string of bests soon, and it means that I've really enjoyed my gameplay experience so far, which is awesome. However, I want to talk about the crisis system really quickly. In the best example of opinions changing over time after you play more, you will remember in my preview video, if you watched it, that I wasn't super high on the crisis system. I had only experienced 2 of the available types of crises. I'm still not sure how many there are, and neither of them really felt like a capital C crisis. I never felt like anything was going wrong. I could just prepare for them, or it would happen and I could really easily just figure out a solution. And at no point did I go, oh, this is negatively impacting my empire at all. Then I discovered a third crisis that happened, and it absolutely walloped me in the best way possible. It did not take away from the gameplay experience. I did not go, oh my goodness, I just put 8 hours into this game and the crisis ruined it or anything like that, but it packed a punch. It was a real genuine crisis, and I did figure it out, but I struggled, and the AI struggled as well, and it was one of the most satisfying kind of 20 turn bits of Civ I've played in a very long time. So my opinion on the whole system, if more of the crises feel like that third one, my opinion of the whole system will change. And it's also a matter of taste. If you are someone who wants to play Civ and not have random kind of crises just ruin your entire game, then maybe you're happier where I'm like less happy, where you're like, okay, I'm glad the crises exist, but I don't really want them to overwhelmingly impact my game. That third one was hard for me to deal with though, so that got me excited. Where it still felt a little bit weird for me, where I kind of had to do like a mental leap to get over it, was in the policy card selection for crisis policy cards. When the crisis happens, you are going to have a bunch of crisis policy cards available, and as the crisis intensifies, you will need to slot more and more of them in, and the idea is that these have a negative impact on your empire. Once you select that negative impact, you'll then, as a player, go into the game and figure out how to get around it. I think as a player, though, I would rather them skip the policy card step and just tell me what's happening. It's a crisis. I just want them to tell me what's happening, and then I'll get around it. Editing VB here, just to do a little bit of clarification. When the crisis happens, it is giving you a negative effect, and that is the game just telling you, hey, there is a revolt crisis, your people have destroyed a granary, hey, there is a barbarian crisis, here are the barbarians. So in that sense, the game is telling me what the crisis is and just making me deal with it. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm only talking about the policy cards where I get to choose additional negative effects. I would just prefer if the game also just told me what those negative effects were going to be so that I could find a way to deal with them. Thus, the whole crisis is being foisted upon me and I have to deal with it instead of any aspect of me getting to choose some of the negative effects. Let's get back to the video. This crisis that absolutely walloped me in the best way possible was I'll call it a revolt crisis, where there's a happiness crisis in your empire, people are destroying things, citizens become unhappy, cities just drain happiness. And you're able to go in the policy cards, and I'm just going to make up some examples here that might not be perfectly correct, but like -10 happiness in the capital, or, -5 happiness in all cities might be an example. And then I could just look and be like, well, I have 25 happiness in the capital, so I could lose 10 and not really care that much, so I'll put that in. You know what I mean? And that's easy to work around, or I'll lose -5. And I just feel like they're kind of adding a step that is unnecessary and doesn't add to the experience of a crisis. What I would rather happen is for the game to tell me, VanBradley, your people, there's a crisis, people are unhappy, they're revolting. It has resulted in -10 happiness in the capital. It has resulted in -5 happiness in all of your cities. How are you as a leader going to do with it? I would rather the crisis happen and the game tell me what the negative effect is, and then as a player have to strategically figure that out, instead of there's a crisis and then I get to choose what the negative effect is out of a bunch of negative effect options, right? And then formulate a strategy around the best optimal negative effect. I don't know if what I'm saying is making sense, but I feel like they could just scrap the crisis policy card I feel like they could get rid of the whole thing and just have the crisis give me a gameplay effect for me to work around, and I personally would feel better about it. But hey, maybe you'll like the crisis policy card system. It just feels like a little bit disengaged from like a crisis to me. The next best is going to be the influence system. I don't want to talk about it too much here. However, what I will say is I was just overjoyed that as a resource, influence is hard-ish to come by compared to some of the other resources, but also very valuable no matter where you spend it. If you have your influence and you spend it on endeavors, if you have your influence and you spend it on befriending city-states, if you have have your influence and you spend it on giving yourself more war support, there are always good things to spend your influence on, and you always feel like you don't quite have enough to do everything, which to me is the perfect way to implement most systems in strategy games, where you have to be strategic with it. You will not have enough influence to do everything, but if you are very intentional with how you use your influence, you will always be rewarded for doing that. Overall, the influence system just really rocked and was a really positive part of my gameplay experience, and one that I wasn't even expecting. I had no thoughts about the influence system going in, and I've really enjoyed it. Another best is the resources, for a whole bunch of reasons. The resources are so much more dynamic than they have been in other Civ games. You have empire-wide resources that are giving an effect to your entire empire. You have city resources that you can only slot into cities, which may change how many cities and towns you want to pursue. You have bonus resources, which can kind of go anywhere. The effects are super cool, and the effects of those resources kind of change on an era-by-era basis. So you might have a resource in the Antiquity Age that gives you like +4 food in your capital and +6 food to any other city because you're all on the same continent, kind of. And then in the Exploration Age, now that you've expanded, you have the distant lands. You might have a resource that says, you know, +4 food on a kind of normal domestic city and +8 food on a distant land city. So your resources can be really strategically used based on which city you're putting them in. It's dynamic, it's fun, it's interesting. The effects are really good, but not super powerful. Overall, you can stack them to make them really powerful, though, so there's a good amount of strategy involved. The resource system, along with the influence system, just two examples of things that I had no real opinions about going in, but that I really enjoyed. Another thing I've really enjoyed are the individual legacy paths. In each age, you get the same 4 kind of overarching paths: culture, domination, economic, and science, but the quests in each age are a little bit different. Fundamentally, though, what I like about them is they feel significant in the game. They are missions you can go on and you can focus on. However, if you just want to kind of tootle around the game and play how you like, you'll start collecting points in a variety of different paths. So you might not finish one, but you will collect like the halfway point of all 4 of them, which is really satisfying as well. So it's really enabled a few different types of gameplay options, whether you want to hard focus one or kind of just start collecting them all like Pokemon. Those are both valid ways to do it. Crucially, though, they've made them easier to understand. I don't know how they correlate to victory conditions yet. Again, I haven't really touched the modern age at all, and we can't talk about it anyway. But in terms of the first 2 eras with the legacy paths, I found them to be fun and exciting, but easy to understand. I'm no longer trying to figure out like domestic tourists and other tourists and having to open a wiki and having to do this, that, or the other just to understand what I meant to be doing. So yeah, overall, legacy paths really well executed. The tech trees are also really satisfying. In the science tree, you have your big overarching kind of blocks of technology with your masteries underneath. I found these to both be really engaging. The masteries are no joke. You can either go through all of your big blocks of tech to kind of get bigger unlocks, or it's completely appropriate strategically to kind of collect masteries along the way as well. There's a lot of dynamism with how you can move through the tech tree, which is really great. I was worried the masteries would kind of feel like tacked on things you kind of get at the end of the age if you have extra science. Not at all. The masteries are super worth it, and you can find strategic gameplay and kind of going all the way to the end and circling back, or picking up the masteries as you go along. The Civic Tree is where things really get exciting, though. I've added an extra 10 to 15 hours since the preview, and I feel exactly the same. The Civic Tree is where it is at. Another capital B best, because not only do you have your Civic Tree and your Civic Masteries, you also have a unique Civic Tree for your Civ, which is awesome. So your Civ is going to have unique policy card options and unique civics that other Civs don't have, which is a great little bit of customizability within each civilization. Crucially, a lot of those abilities will carry with you game to game. So if you play Rome in the Antiquity Age and you have your unique Roman policy cards and you get to the next age, you've picked a new Civ, those Roman specific policy cards will often stick with you, which has been really fun. So the Civic Tree and the Tech Tree, but mostly the Civic Tree, have just been a real joy to move through. The last 2 things I want to touch on in this video are the settlement limit and the map, both things I'm putting in the best category. The settlement limit is really fun. You acquire more settlement limit pretty naturally, but you can also find ways to kind of hard target settlement limit if that is the strategy you're going to go for. It allows for an interesting combination of wide and tall gameplay. I found it best to be at the settlement limit and then kind of within that choose how many towns and cities I wanted. Now, all of these gameplay things might just change with a balance patch over time, so everything I'm saying might be nonsense by the time this video even comes out. However, what I will say is I found it best to play at the settlement limit. So if I could have 10 cities, I found it best to have 10 settlements. sense. But then within that, I could choose to have 2 cities and 8 towns, or 5 cities and 5 towns, and I could really customize the wide and tall gameplay aspects within the settlement limit, which I thought was the best of all worlds for people who like to play Civ in different ways. That's an opinion that might change with more experience, but at least for right now, I'm finding it really engaging. I've had successful games with, again, like 2 cities and 8 towns, or 5 cities and 5 towns, or 8 cities and 2 towns, and so I found that you can find success in any combination if you're willing to kind of work hard at the strategy of it. And finally, with regard to the map, I want to shout out Navigable Rivers. Navigable Rivers are one of the best additions to any Civ game ever, in my opinion. I'm having so much fun with my cities being able to connect to the coast through a navigable river. If you're in a naval combat situation, you can march your entire navy up someone's navigable river to go and destroy their city or whatever, which is super duper fun. So yeah, Navigable Rivers, huge improvement to the map. And I want to shout out the map generation in Civ 7 as well. Unlike Civ 6, where I find I enjoy the game more if I have the better balanced start mod, and maybe that'll still be true when those kind of mods come out for Civ 7, I found the map generation to work a lot more seamlessly in Civ 7. The way they've generated the maps is different anyway, and so I'm not surprised that the maps just feel a little better. But I felt like the maps always feel full enough but not too empty. I always have enough space but not too much space. The map that generates is always like good enough for me to have a really good strategy, but not absolutely mind-bendingly overpowered. I've never wanted to re-roll a map. Like, I've never got into a game and gone, you know what, I want to re-roll this map. That is a feeling I had all the time in Civ 6. So far in Civ 7, I've never wanted to re-roll a map one time, which I think is a huge shout out to the map generation system and how successful I'm kind of finding it subconsciously. I didn't really think about it until this video, but subconsciously, I'm enjoying it. So here it is. And finally, I'm going to tack on a little bit of a worst at the end just to kind of make a worst sandwich around that string of bests we just went on. Now, this is a complete balance thing and will likely be, changed over time. However, I'm finding at the moment the relationship between gold and production to be a little bit strange. I find that, I can often set up my cities and towns in a way where I very infrequently need to produce large, kind of substantial projects. I can always just, produce the easy, quick ones that have low turn times and always purchase the ones with larger turn times, at least the critical ones that I really want. I feel like the relationship between production and gold is just a little bit strange, and I'm often finding it a little bit too easy to purchase all of the big ticket items I want in my empire. Now, I wouldn't want it to shift too far the other way either, because I think it's a fun strategy that I'm enjoying playing with. But I think there are maybe too many ways to get too much gold if you have a small amount of cities to be able to purchase all of the big ticket items in those cities, which is a very lowercase w worst, and I'm kind of just putting it in here for the sake of the video, but it's something I definitely feel while playing. I'm also completely changing my mind here and going with another best to just add a best at the end of this worst best sandwich we're doing. Anyways, the final best in this video before I let you go, the whole social meta progression system has been a real joy. I didn't even know it was going to be in the game when I got my hands on it. You can level up your leaders, you can level up your profile, you get these cool mementos which have real actual kind of abilities tied to them, which are super great. I find everything to do with the kind of social profile, leader experience, memento gathering aspect of the game to just be really enjoyable, and like you can engage with it or not, which is really fun. Like you can enjoy it and engage with it, or you don't have to enjoy it or engage with it, but it's kind of there if you want to, and I've really enjoyed it so far. That will be it for this video. I hope this was a good summary of the things I've really enjoyed and not enjoyed so much so far in Civilization 7. These are all first impressions. A lot of them may change over time, like the Crisis one already has. However, I don't want someone to have to watch a bunch of hour-long preview videos if they don't want to, so I hope this was a good summary. If you have any questions about Civ 7, we got a Discord that is in the description below. Feel free to leave some comments as well. Don't forget, of course, to hit that subscribe button for more Civilization content in the future. Thank you so much for watching. My name is VanBradley, and I will see you in the next one.